Looks like we got Joey back on the line. Let me make sure. Joey, do you have us?
Yep.
Okay.
You have me?
Yep, I got you, man. Thanks for hopping on for a little bit. I don't know if you heard my question, but what was it like being there last night, hearing your name called and 4 other teammates as part of that PLL draft?
Yeah, it was just great, just to, kind of experience that stuff with, guys that, I came here to Cuse with. I've gotten a chance to, obviously play with Dante now. This will be year 2. So it was just unbelievable, just to, be able to, kind of just experience that moment with all those guys. So
it was pretty clear, certainly, that your dad was trying like heck to trade up and get you the California Redwoods GM, and he ended up selecting a couple of Syracuse guys, which was cool to see. Michael Leo went 6th overall, and Dante Bowen, you just mentioned, went 30th overall. You ended up going to the Maryland Whipsnakes with the 3rd pick. How do you size up the fit there and just your excitement level to be a part of the Maryland Whipsnakes and also be a part of that team with your guy Billy Juan, who we found out in the next round he was selected to the Whipsnakes?
Yeah, I had a couple great calls with Coach Stagnita. He's actually an upstate guy as well. So when they picked me, I was pumped and to play with a guy like TJ Malone at a back, will be great. And, getting to be on the same team as Rob, who I kind of grew up with. He got drafted to the Lizards, I want to say 2014, 2015. I was around like 10 or 11. And, just growing up, I watched a ton of him. I got to be really close with him. And, just to be on the same team as him is going to be unreal. And, as you saw from that clip, I was the most excited guy in the world when Billy got picked. We've talked about it a bit. We kind of talked to the same coaches, so we kind of felt like, there was a pretty good possibility, that we might be going to the same team. And the pick before, I think the pick before him was Hunter Smith. And, I kind of knew right away that, we were going to be on the same team. So.
Yeah, that'll be awesome for Billy, too, growing up in that area. And he is a part of the Maryland Whipsnakes with Joey starting next season as part of the Premier Lacrosse League. Have you ever played with a guy like Billy Juan, who is a D-pole, and the way he scores, Joey? We saw another goal last week, and I joke with people all the time that anytime Billy scores, it's definitely a highlight reel goal also. He's just had some unbelievable goals in his Syracuse career, especially for a D-pole.
Yeah, he does not score ugly goals. I think every single goal that he's scored, it's either an absolute snipe or just a goal where you're like, what just happened? But yeah, I think Billy's made for the PLL, and I don't think this will be the last time, that you guys will get to see him score a pretty cool goal, and he's great. So I'm just pumped that we're on the same team.
Yeah, no doubt. And we mentioned Dante Bowen goes with the 30th overall pick to the California Redwoods. He's a guy that I've talked about throughout the year as being underrated. And we use that phrase a lot when it comes to short stick defensive midfielders because they just don't get a lot of credit, and they're the ones that get criticized and get picked on a lot in game. You said you played with him for a little bit. Just speak to how valuable Dante Bowen has been for Syracuse this year and how excited you were for him to get some recognition last night and get drafted.
Yeah, so he got traded mid-season in Orangeville. He got traded to us for our playoff run. So getting to spend a lot of time with him, I got to know him quickly. And he had mentioned that he had an extra year from a year that he didn't use when he was at Ohio State. So I think after I found that out, I think I reached out to Coach O, and I was like, Coach, we got to get this guy. He's an absolute beast. But yeah, he's great. We live in the same house, and he is just awesome. He's a pretty tough guy to beat. He plays hard. He's just a great guy, and I'm just so pumped for him. He works his tail off, and I'm just super happy for him. So.
Yeah, well said. Joey Spallina is with us right now, number 22 for Syracuse men's lacrosse. And you guys bounced back last week, got a really big win over Virginia at home on Alumni Weekend and Coach Desko Ring of Honor. What do you think was working so well for you guys offensively in the last game against Virginia to bounce back, win that game 14-9?
Yeah, I think to go back a bit, I thought UNC, right? I think we just came out flat, right? You can say whatever, right? You can say the grass, you can say the heat, right? You can say any of that stuff, but at the end of the day, right, we're 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids, right? None of that stuff should really affect us. And, I think as an offense, right, we kind of knew that, and we knew that we had to be better, and the UVA team that we played, they're a great team, right? They're well coached, they got great players, so we knew that we couldn't play like that again, or we might lose. So I think we just had a different sense of urgency, just playing in front of the pretty packed out crowd always gets us going, and I think more importantly, right, I think we just played hard. I think we're a pretty skilled group, right, but when we're playing hard and we're making it difficult on the D, we're a pretty tough group to keep up with. So.
You talked about the crowd, and the crowds this year have been great, and they've really been great every year you've been at Syracuse. I'm wondering for you, it's amazing that this is going to be your senior day on Saturday, and then we hope there's going to be one more home game. Certainly it feels like the way things are trending, you guys are in good shape to get an extra game in the NCAA playoffs, but your time is kind of running out for playing big-time games in the JMA Wireless Dome. Just how much fun has it been to run out onto the Dome field, play in front of that type of environment in your 4-year career here?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. I think one of the things that I said, when I first committed to Cuse, right, was kind of bringing the crowd back, right? Bringing Syracuse lacrosse back to where it should be, right? And I think that's just, I think I kind of started that with the community. Right, getting out there, and getting the number 22 right in the right line, or in getting it back out there again, in the right way, I think that's where those big crowds kind of come from. I think since my first year, I think people saw just a lot of kids out there playing, and Year 2, we got better, right? Year 3, we got better, right? We got bigger crowds. I think it was maybe the Maryland game, my sophomore year, that crowd was insane. And then last year, we had some monster crowds. I'm drawing a blank on the games.
Notre Dame was big last year. That comes to mind. Yeah.
That game was nuts. But, I think, just to kind of go back, right? When I first committed here, right, I took a lot of pride in, bringing Cuse back to where it should be. And we actually had John Wildhack at practice today, and that was kind of the thing that he kind of told us was, he was so proud of our class, right, for bringing Syracuse lacrosse back to where it should be. But yeah, I mean it's the Dome is it's the best place to play, probably in the sport, and there's really no debate, right? I mean,
yeah,
you can go to all these other places, right? It's great, yeah. But there's just a different feel when you're in there, and there's a big game, and it's packed. It's just different.
No doubt. I think you put it very well. Kyle always jokes to me it's the Sistine Chapel of college lacrosse. I mean, there's just nothing.
100%.
There's nothing like the Dome. And I do admire you for how much you have embraced all those things you just talked about, bringing Syracuse back, wearing number 22, understanding the pressure that comes with that. Has it surprised you at all? I know you really knew everything about Syracuse lacrosse as a high school kid and a youngster as much as you could, really, and you certainly knew what you were getting into to some extent, but has it maybe even surprised you a little bit just how crazy this town is, this community is for lacrosse, and what comes with playing for Syracuse?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you probably the best example that I can give you. I was in Wegmans yesterday, and I was getting lunch, and I got stopped by this older man. Guy had to be like 70, and he talked for, I would say, a half hour just about lacrosse and about the team and about the draft, and just it was just like at that point I was like, the sport and the team really means a lot to this area. And you're not getting that anywhere else. It's just the way it is. It's the hardest thing to describe, but like you're not getting that wherever you are. It's really just amazing, right? How much the people up here care. I was a little shocked my freshman year, just kind of how crazy people are. Just from the fact, right, when you play good, it's like, oh my God, you're Jesus Christ. To when you play bad, it's you shouldn't play again. But to be honest with you, I love it. Right? It's there's no other thing at least as a competitor, right? Like you wouldn't want it any other way. I think it might have been Ryan Day, the Ohio State coach, but he had a quote just saying like, if there's not pressure on you, right? Like, are you really that relevant? And I think it hits perfectly for Cuse and for this area. Right? It's just like when you're good, right? Like the people care, and as much as they want you to succeed, right, they're going to get on you when you don't do it, So I really think that's what makes this place what it is, so.
Yeah, so well said. And obviously we all know going into this senior day game for you, you're 2 points away from breaking the program record. And this is another thing that I admire about you. I know you really just don't care about individual stats or records or those things. What you care about is bringing a national championship to Syracuse and getting them back to the top of the sport. So, final question for you. What's it going to take, not only against Colgate, but just going forward for you guys to go on a run in May and get to the top of the sport and hopefully win that national championship?
Yeah, I think it's just to play with that bite, right? To play with that edge. It's you can clearly tell, right, when we're playing that way, and I think we're an incredibly tough team to beat when we are playing that way. We're so skilled, but in this sport, right, like you have to play mean, right? Like you have to have that, that toughness, and I think with the group of guys that we have, we got Canadians, right? We got natives, we got Long Island guys, we got Maryland guys, even though they're probably not the toughest. But we have a great group, and it's just guys that really care. It's guys that are really bought into just the way that the sport is here, and what it truly means, and people don't talk about, all the accolades and stuff like that. They care about championships here. And I think that's all this team really cares about, so, all this other stuff is great, but I would much rather have a 2026 championship banner up in the dome.
Awesome stuff, Joey. I appreciate you making some time for us, and enjoy senior day, and we're all rooting for you as you head down the stretch in your senior season. Also, congrats again on getting drafted last night.
Thank you so much.
All right, there's Joey Spallina. He will be honored on senior day, that class of 2022, all honored on senior day this weekend, Saturday afternoon, 5 p.m. game against Colgate.